when the world lets you down, and all you see is sadness all around. From the night you'll hear me say, I will hold you, I will guide you in the dark, I will teach you how to fly, I will love you, I will lead you to the light, I will teach you how to fly. When the voices get too loud, and all your hope begins to drain out, lend me your hand and hear me say, I will hold you, I will teach you how to fly.
What's up, everybody? Great to see you guys this weekend. I want to welcome those that might be sitting outside or those of you that are joining us online. So glad that you chose to hang with us this weekend, and been praying that God would do something kind of cool in your heart today. So thanks for showing up. I'm really excited that I get to be a part of this series because I just love kids. I've always loved kids. I love students. I've been involved in student ministry most of my adult life. I got a passion for helping kids come to know the God who loves them with all of his heart. I love to watch kids grow. I love to watch them soar. And I got to tell you, I am so proud of the kids and the students that are here at Real Life, the way they bring their passion, their energy, their gifts, their joy, the way they live out their faith uniquely in places that most of us can't go. I mean, they're making a difference in their schools, in their band rooms, on the soccer fields, on the football fields, on the basketball court, at dance recitals, and gymnastic practice, Snapchat, all the places that adults really can't go. And it's so cool how so many of our kids and students just walking with God every day and making a big difference with their lives. But today I don't want to talk to you so much today as a pastor. I want to talk to you as a dad. Because one of the greatest honors and privileges of my life has been being a husband and a dad. And I've certainly made my share of mistakes along the way, and I'm probably going to make a few more before all is said and done, but with major involvement from a perfect father, my Father in heaven, and an unbelievable wife, and some really great people who came alongside of us and built into our kids, I can honestly look back and go, wow, I've got few regrets in the raising of our kids. I'm so proud of the people that they have become. You may have heard me say before that there ought to be a new word introduced in our English language. And the word is this. The word is parentnoid. That's the fear of becoming just like your parents. Anybody parentnoid these days, you know what I'm talking about? Any of you parents, let me ask you, do any of you find yourself saying the same things you swore you would never say to your kids when you became a parent? I mean, parents say some stupid things anyway, right? We say stuff like, you want a spanking? Absolutely, put it right here. Really, really hard. They say stupid things like, what did I just say? A little early dementia there, Dad? What's going on? You know, hey, don't make me come in there. Dad, you haven't been out of that chair in 5 years. You're not coming in here. I know you have. I wonder at one time if Mary and Joseph ever said to Jesus when he left the back door open to go out to play, I wonder if he ever said, boy, you born in a barn? Yeah, actually I was. Don't you remember? That's the way No, parents can say some really stupid things, can't we? I mean, we all do. But I'm telling you, one of the smartest things a mom or a dad can ever say is, God, I need your help raising these kids. I'm just going to hit my knees on a regular basis, and with everything I got, I'm going to build my own life and my kids' life on God's incredible love and wisdom and rock-solid truth. There's a time in the Old Testament history where this leader named Moses, many of you have heard of Moses, he gathers the people of Israel together. And he says, you guys remember how we came out of an extremely pagan nation that worshiped everything but God. Remember that? And remember how God proved that he was greater than all the little wannabe gods of Egypt? You remember how God led us out of 400 years of slavery in Egypt? Remember how he made a way through the Red Sea and we walked across on dry land? You guys remember that, right? He goes, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen up. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Just repeat them again and again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your foreheads as reminders. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates, whatever it takes. He's saying to them and he's saying to us, listen, you're going to have a temptation to put a lot of other things first in your life. And as a parent, you're going to stress certain things to your kids, like don't hit your brother, and make sure you close your mouth when you chew your food, and don't wipe your snot on your sleeve, and practice your free throws, and do your homework, and don't text and drive. And all those things are well and good. But never, ever forget that the most important thing you can ever do in this life, and the most important thing you can teach your kids to do, is to love the Lord their God with all their heart, with all their soul, and with all their strength, because that's why we were created, to do life with him. You see, who our kids become are so much more important than what they grow up to do. And that's why smart parents teach and model internal and eternal values. See, wise parents don't so much define success as GPA or degrees or fame or how many zeros are behind the income numbers that their kids grow up in, the careers they do. They focus more on heart and mind and soul and strength stuff, lasting things like integrity and honesty and love and courage and compassion and joy and kindness and humility, stuff that lasts. I got a friend named George Barna who's done a ton of research, a ton, on raising awesome kids. He has so many great stats and findings. You ought to get your hand on some of his stuff. But he kind of sums it up in a great little book called Revolutionary Parenting by saying this. He said, great parents recognize from the moment a child leaves the womb until he or she leaves the home that they must tirelessly guard and shape the mind, the heart, and the soul of their kids. That's what we ought to be pouring into. In fact, did you know that from the time our kids leave the womb until the time they leave the house, like when they're 18 years old, we have 936 weeks. We got 936 weeks, that's it, to guard and mold and shape and teach and model what it means to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And make no mistake about it, our kids are watching us. They take their cues from us. Kids pick up on everything. Kids are just naturally observant, aren't they? I've always loved the story that Bruce Larson tells about going on vacation with his family. They're doing some hiking somewhere in California. And he said they came upon a sign that said, Naturalist Camp. So being lovers of God's creation, they proceeded into this nature preserve, not realizing it was a nudist camp. And all of a sudden, a group of people come riding toward them, buck naked, on bicycles. And the 5-year-old little boy went, oh, man, they're not wearing helmets. Kids notice everything. They're just observant. And kids watch us, too. Make no mistake about it. They know whether work or worship is more important to us. They know. They know whether or not we really like the neighbors or not. They know whether we really love each other or not. They know what we sing. They know what we read. They know what we watch. They pick up on everything. They're always looking. I've always liked what Mary Corzan writes from the perspective of our kids. She says, when you thought I wasn't looking, you hung my first painting on the refrigerator, and I wanted to paint another. When you thought I wasn't looking, you fed a stray cat, and I thought it was a good idea to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, you baked a birthday cake just for me, and I learned that little things are special. When you thought I wasn't looking, you said a prayer, and I believed that there was a God I could talk to too. When you thought I wasn't looking, you kissed me goodnight, and I felt like the whole world was right. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come from your eyes, and I learned that sometimes things hurt, and it's okay to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, you smiled, and it made me want to look that pretty too. When you thought I wasn't looking, you cared, and I wanted to be everything I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked. And I just want to say thanks for all those things you did when you thought I wasn't looking. They're looking. You want a really good book on parenting? Let me recommend one for you. It's called the Book of Proverbs in the Old Testament of the Bible. And it is a book that is just full of wisdom for kids, for parents, for family dynamics. And I especially like this passage where a dad is talking directly to his son, but he's also kind of reminding himself of the influence that he has. He says this, young man, obey your father and mother. Take to heart all of their advice. Keep in mind everything they tell you. Every day and all night long, their counsel will lead you and save you from harm. He says, when you wake up in the morning, let their instruction guide you into the new day. For their advice, catch this, is a beam of light directed into the dark corners of your mind to warn you of danger and to give you a good life. Debbie and I were walking one night when our kids were young. It was one summer evening. We lived out in the country in central Kentucky. It was really, really dark out where we lived because we didn't have street lights and stuff. And we were walking in this really long driveway. And the stars were out this night. I mean, especially bright on this particular night. They were everywhere. You could see the Milky Way really, really clear. The moon was really, really bright, a little sliver, but it was super, super bright. And I noticed that. Then an airplane flew overhead and put on its landing lights. And I noticed those lights. And that's all the searchlight from the airport was about 10 miles away, sweep through the sky. I mean, it felt like the whole sky was just lit up with these brilliant lights. But the one I noticed the most was a lightning bug, a firefly. He was right in front of my nose. And my philosophical mind started churning. And I thought, you know what? I might not be the biggest, most brilliant, fanciest light in my kids' galaxy. But I can be the closest. I can get right up in front of them and model what it means to live with integrity and compassion, to have a good work ethic, to be generous with your stuff, to be kind and courageous. I can get right up in front of them, up close. And maybe if I get their attention, that all the other lights that will entice won't entice them so much. Because you do know, don't you, there's so many bright lights out there saying to our kids, oh, come on, this is the way you ought to live your life. This is what's important. This is what's not. This is what's true. This is what's not. And they will spend billions of dollars on advertising, trying to shape the way our kids think, what they ought to look like, what they ought to wear, how they ought to spend their money, how they ought to spend their time. So many wannabe little gods out there clamoring for our kids' heart, mind, soul, and strength. And if our kids can watch us worship and give and share and help and serve and love and walk by faith, hopefully they will end up loving God and being generous with their stuff and living beyond themselves and discovering just walking with God is the very best way to live this life. So parents, we got to be the closest light. And you know what smart parents do? They also get a bunch of other bright lights together to help them. Because did you know it's our collective responsibility to point our kids the right direction, to give our kids a strong start, a strong foundation? Because we're in this thing together. I want to go back a few verses and read the beginning of that Deuteronomy 6 passage. And I want to point out a principle that's been so vital in the building of our family through the years. Moses says this, these are the commands, decrees, and regulations that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you. You must obey them in the land you're about to enter and occupy, and you and your children and grandchildren must fear the Lord your God as long as you live. And if you obey all of his decrees and commands, you're going to enjoy a long life. Listen closely, Israel. Be careful to obey. Then all will go well with you, and you'll have many children in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has promised you. Again, he starts with that foundation of love and respect and awe for who God is. So just walk with him. Just walk with him, and you'll have a good life. But there's something else that kind of jumped out at me in this passage. Moses addresses the whole nation, the whole people of God here. Back then, you had multi-generational families all living together, and everybody is there in the crowd. You got grandma, great-grandma, you got aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors. Their culture was built around community. It still very much is. So the word for you that Moses uses here in the Hebrew language is plural. It's kind of like, well, I'm from Kentucky. It's kind of like we say y'all. The plural of y'all is all y'all. That's the plural. And so Moses, sorry about that. Moses is saying, this is for all y'all. We're in this thing together, raising kids and teaching values and building in the families so that we'll grow and flourish. It really does take all of us. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all the different people that have helped shape our kids' life. All the family members we have. I think of Debbie's brothers, Dave and Dan, who took their role of an uncle very, very seriously and just poured into the lives of our kids and model to them what it means to kind of be a man, but to be tender and compassionate and a servant type of leader. And I think of my folks and Debbie's folks just poured so much into the life of our kids while they were growing up, and not to mention all kinds of aunts and other uncles and cousins and great-grandparents and neighbors. And you add to that the countless teachers and coaches that my kids have had through the years, and people at all the churches we've been a part of who have touched our kids in so many cool ways. I'm talking about people that just volunteered in children's ministry, men and women who rocked them as babies, in the nursery, people who taught them Bible stories as little kids and reinforced all the values that we were teaching them at home, and student ministry pastors and volunteers, small group leaders who just made a huge investment into the lives of our kids, and people who didn't even have kids of their own, but they would scholarship our kids and lots of other kids to go to camps and retreats. I'm so grateful. So, some of you have heard me talk before about how our daughter Jody, who's an awesome girl, by the way, when she was in high school, or junior year in high school, she kind of got off track. And she started to go down some pretty dark roads. And man, we prayed all the time for her. And God got her attention, and she came to her senses. And she said, I want a relationship with God. But she didn't really know exactly, how she was going to pursue that. So we said, why don't you go to this week of camp? So we went to a week of camp, and it was really, really great for her. And we said, okay, as soon as you get home from that week of camp, you're going to another week of camp. And she said, okay, I'll go, because she just wanted to renew her mind. And it was at that week of camp where she surrendered her life to Jesus Christ, a 17-year-old kid. And the guy that preached the message that night was this 25-year-old guy named Rusty George. And I'm eternally grateful for the way people like Rusty poured into my kids as they were growing up. I'm grateful for the all y'all community of people who were so vital in helping our kids turn into superheroes who are making a difference with their lives. See, that's the way it's supposed to be. We're in this thing together. And that's why I'm so grateful for all the people that work in real life ministry with kids, with students. And I'm so excited that we're going to make more space for them on this campus. I get fired up thinking about all the good things that are going to happen on the inside of them, the way that God will become so real to them, and they'll have the opportunity to live out their faith and use their gifts and invite their friends. It's going to be a cool thing. Well, Jim Howard, he is the director of family ministries here, and he recently sat down to talk about what we're trying to do together.
Hey, Real Life Church, my name is Jim Howard, and I'm the Executive Director of Family Ministries. I served in children's ministry for 13 years. God just stirred in my heart that He wanted me to reach out to kids and let them know what fills their heart. And in that, I realized that the whole family needed engagement. You have the influence of the home and you have the influence of the church, and both influencers are great, but if you combine them, you have a greater influence. And so my passion is to combine home and church into one and work together in the spiritual raising of our kids. We want to do that in so many different ways. One way is how we structure our weekend services to be a launch point for families instead of the end point for a family's week. The second is, how do we structure our kids' areas to get the maximum amount of what they need to understand at their levels? So we're excited about making this more specific in some of our areas, like taking apart kindergarten through fourth grade and just having a kindergarten first grade area, just having a second, third, large group, small group area. Right now, I'm on the third floor, the kindergarten through fourth grade area. And right now, it might look a little empty and a little quiet, but on Sunday morning, it's cramped and full of energy. If you've ever been down this hallway on a Sunday morning, You can see the many challenges we face, from long check-in lines to classrooms being filled to capacity. Unfortunately, we're just out of space for new families. This means many new families get turned away from our check-in centers. But we have an exciting idea that we've been praying about, dreaming about, and thinking about for a while that creates new space that allows more families to experience Jesus and experience Real Life Church. I am standing on the site where we are dreaming about a 15 to 20,000 square foot space for upper elementary through high school students. We are building this because we want to expand space for our weekend services, but we also want to partner with families throughout the week by providing spaces where we can do counseling with families with different programs, mentoring, all different programmings that will strengthen the families here in the Santa Clarita Valley. This building will allow our upper elementary through high school students to have a designated space, an irresistible space that they can come and feel safe and be a part of on the weekends and throughout the week. That also opens space in our other building to allow more expansion for our ever-expanding children's ministry. We are so excited about this. This building is more than just bricks and mortar. This building is a place where people can come and purposely understand how to find and follow Jesus more intently.
Well, I'm excited that we get to do this together. Now, some of you guys, you've heard Rusty talk about how we're also going to be able to take a chunk of the finances that we're all going to throw in together, and we're going to partner with some great organizations who are helping kids in crisis, whether it's hunger or poverty or sex trafficking or human slavery around the world. And so excited that there's going to be a bunch of kids that get lifted out of tough circumstances and given hope. And I'm really humbled to be a part of a church that cares about all kids around the world. But have you ever thought about, because of the money that you and I sacrificially and joyfully give, and the way so many people tirelessly pour in to kids around here, do you ever think about how much pain and disillusionment and dysfunction might actually be prevented? Do you ever think about how many kids are on the right track because we got proactive about it? I mean, think about, families that actually love each other these days, and how many siblings actually get along because they've learned godly values along the way, and how many kids may never experiment with drugs or alcohol or pornography because they're just learning a better way to do life when they're young. And how many kids will never grow up and bully other kids? They'll always stand up for the underdog, and students who will reach out to kids that might be seen as a little different. And how many kids will grow up living with a heart full of gratitude instead of a sense of entitlement? Kids that will be confident in knowing who they are because they know that they're a much-loved child of God. Kids that will joyfully give and serve and live beyond themselves because they've seen us do it. Like anybody, I got a few regrets in my life, but one thing I've never regretted was being generous. I've just discovered it's the best way to live. And Deb and I have been a part of so many cool, growing churches like this that have always had a need for expanding ministry stuff. I can't even count the number of once-in-a-lifetime offerings we've been a part of, and we have been thrilled to be a part of every single one of them because of the difference that we knew that our collective generosity with a bunch of other people would end up making in somebody else's life. And so we moved to Southern California, and here we are. We get to do it again. Our kids' church over in Ventura, a mission church that Real Life helped start, it needs to expand. They got a little resource initiative going on right now called Making Space, and they're trying to get more of the theaters in the theater that they're currently renting to make space for kids. I mean, just last weekend, Debbie and I turned in a commitment card to Mission Church. And Real Life now needs to expand, and we're praying about how we can participate here because kids matter. People matter. And generosity is just the best way to live. I'm telling you guys, I have never, ever looked back at my life in those times that I've been generous, even sacrificially generous, and thought, dang it, if I hadn't had to give to that, I could have put some cool wheels on my truck. I've never once had the thought of, man, if we hadn't given to that, we could have gone to Maui instead of Tijuana. Now, there's nothing wrong with nice cars and nice vacations or kitchen remodels and such. But I've just learned that all that stuff, it only brings a tiny fraction of the joy that living beyond yourself does when you give toward the lives of other people. And besides that, did you know that generosity is one of those, I call them boomerang principles from the Bible, some stuff that God's just set in motion? There's all kinds of those throughout the pages of the Bible, such as if you walk with the wise, you'll become wise. It comes back around. If you sow to the wind, like you live a wild life, you're going to reap the whirlwind that just comes back around. But there's some really cool ones, like if you refresh others, you'll be refreshed. Jesus said, give, and it will be given to you. There's just these boomerang principles. In fact, Jesus even said, getting stuff is pretty fun, but giving is a whole lot better than receiving. There's just so much more joy in that kind of lifestyle. So Rusty's been encouraging all of us to pray, and I know that many of you have been praying about how you're going to throw in financially over the next couple of years to make this all happen. And I just want to add my encouragement for you to pray and talk about it. Whenever Debbie and I have been a part of something like this, we always sit down and pray and try to come to a number in each of our minds and put it together. And she's always got the higher number, but she drags me along. But we ask questions like, is there something we could do without for a couple of years? Is there something we can just postpone? Is there some creative way? Do we have some stuff we could sell? Any way to tap into our equity? Any extra income that comes in? Maybe all that could just go straight to this. And we're asking those questions again, because we're called to do this together. This is an all y'all kind of moment in our church, and it could be a defining moment in the life of some kid. So let's just pray about it for a moment. Father, we're just really, really grateful for the way you're a perfect parent, because none of us are. And God, when we hit our knees and we ask for your help, the supernatural power and wisdom comes to us. And God, as we learn things, how to live our lives, and we model and teach in front of our kids, and as they watch us, and God, I just pray that everyone here who's a parent would rely upon your Holy Spirit to help us be the best parents we can be, and to model consistently what it means to love the Lord your God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Father, I thank you for all the people in this church that aren't parents, that come alongside of families and just help build into each other. It's so great to be a part of a community like this, God. And I thank you for what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And I thank you that our collective generosity is going to do some cool things we may never see in the lives of kids around the world we may never meet, in the lives of kids right here in Santa Clarita Valley that we may never meet. But God, you're going to take it and you're going to do some really, really awesome things in their life. So Father, thank you so much for the privilege of being a part of something like this. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Rusty reminded us that this is Memorial Day weekend. And I know tomorrow some of you will be maybe visiting cemeteries and putting flowers and flags on graves and stuff. My dad was a World War II veteran and died about 17 years ago now. And it was always kind of cool just to remember him on Memorial Day and the sacrifices he made. But every time we're together here on a weekend, we have a chance to remember Jesus, who gave the greatest sacrifice anyone's ever given. No one took his life from him. He laid it down so that you and I could be free. Not just free to live in this country, which is cool, but free to live forever, because God wants to do life with us forever. So we take moments like this very seriously, and we're going to pass some communion trays down the row. And if you feel led to do that, just take a cup and a piece of bread and just remember Jesus today and be grateful for all that God has sacrificed on your behalf. So let's have communion together.